So we're now beginning a sugya of Rav and Shmuel regarding Yevamot Shuk on Daf Tzadi Beis Amid Beis. Rabbi Yehuda Marav, minayin she'ein kiddushin tosim b'Yevamot. In other words, if a woman falls for Yibum and another man marries her, the marriage is not valid. Shenemar lo sia eishes hameisa chutza lishzar lo seheba havaya. The Torah is telling us that not just is this a violation of a law, but that the Kedushin themselves, Lizar, are not valid. Ushmuel Omar, Shmuel says, I'm in confusion. But Aniosenu, that's called Anios Hadas, we cannot really make a determination in this context. Why? We're going to have to say, Tzricha get the Mesapkale Shmuel. She'll only need a get based on Safek. According to Rav, she doesn't need a get at all because there's no Havaya. And what was Shmuel's Safek? Hai lo sia eches hames. How do you interpret it? Number one, you can interpret it as ila lav hudios, just telling you that you're not allowed to marry this woman. But it has the same status as all other chayvi lavim, which means that the marriage is valid, and therefore she'll need a get. Oh, or perhaps lo tafsive kedushin hudiyasa, that the pasuk lo sia, like Rav, is coming to tell you that ein ba'avaya, and there's no tfisas kedushin and chayvei lavim. So if a man tries to marry Yevamot Shuk, the marriage is invalid. She doesn't need a get. But Shmuel's going to require a get because of the suffix that maybe when the Torah says lo sia, it's not telling you that there's no valid kedushin, but rather it's a violation of Allah. Amalei Rav Mari bar Rachel Rav Ashi Hachi Amar Meimer Halacha Kavasi Shmuel, that Yevamot who received kedushin from an ish zar requires a get. Misaf. Amar Rav Ashi Hashta di Amar Meimer Halacha Kavasi Shmuel. So Yevamot who accepted kedushin from an ish zar needs a get. In a case where one aide, or for that matter, two witnesses testify that her husband died before the son died, and she got married, which is fine. And then they found out that just the reverse, that her son died before her Baal, and therefore she's kuka liyibum. She needs a get. And after she gets the get, she could return to the state of Zikas Yibum, and the Yovam could be Mekayim Zika. Again, what's the case? We said that Hilchas Kavasi the Shmuel, that if she gets married to a Zar, she needs a get. Now, there was testimony that she doesn't fall for Yibum because her husband died and left Zera. Now we find out just the opposite, that her Zera, that the Ben died before her husband, and therefore she needs Yibum. So, of course, she gets a get from the man to whom she was married. And not only that, now she falls for Yibum, and the Novam could be Mekayim the mitzvah of Yibum. However, Im Haya Yevamot Kohen, if the brother of her late husband's a Kohen, and now he cannot be miyabim her, because she needs a get from the Makadesh. Is therefore cholik slav sharyala. The Yavam should be matir her with chalitza, because the Yavam cannot fulfill his mitzvah of Yibum because she's a Grusha. Grusha meaning from the Shuk guy. Vishayale, but if the Yavam gives her chalitza, she's allowed to remain married to the second husband. And all this means that the whole Mishnah that we started with at the beginning of this Perek, Zion, or Isha Rabbah, of Teitzi Mizeh Mizeh, only applies to Eishes Ish. It doesn't apply to a violation of Allah. And therefore, the Yavam could be Miyabim if he wasn't a Kohen. And the Sheni is allowed to resume a marriage relation with her after the Yavam gives her chalitza. So the Gemara asks the following question. It gure itgar? It gure itgar. So the Gemara asks the following question and raises the following objection to Rav Ashi. Itgar, if you take the tuf in Aramaic and you put it back to its Hebrew shin, so the word itgar means schar. And what's happening is that this man, the second guy who married her, and she was Yevamot, the marriage was Be'isur, he didn't clarify whether or not she's muterisly nasa, whether he's allowed to marry her. He just relied on whatever flimsy edus they had. Is imkein nimtze chote niska. He gains from the fact that he's married to her. If he wouldn't have been married to her, then the Yavam would have been the Yabim. How did he get to marry her and make it impossible for the Yavam to marry her? It's because he married her first. And now, in a sense, we are abetting a criminal. Because we're telling the Kohen that he has to give the Kohen Yavam, he has to give the Yavama Chalitza. He cannot be miyabim because she's a grusha based on the marriage of the second guy, and he has to terminate that marriage with a get. And now it turns out that the person who should have been miyabim her, namely the Yavam, is being blocked in favor of the one who married her illegally because he's going to divorce her and passel her to the Kohen, and then he's going to marry her. That can't be. Ella, therefore, the Gemara reformulates the statement of Rav Ashi. Im hoye Yevama Yisrael. That's a different story. No sin lasheni get v'hutralo. Then the Yavam is going to be miyabim her. Rav Gido, Rav Chia bar Yosef, Rav Yevama kedushin ein ba nesuin yesh ba. What does this mean? The simple reading of Rav Huna is that if the Yevama received Kedushin from an Ishzar, then she doesn't need a get, which would probably mean that he holds that there's Mamzeris in the case of Yevama L'Shuk, and therefore in Kedushin Tovsimba. But in Nisa, then she needs a get. So the Gemara asks the following question: I Kedushin ein ba, Nisuinami ein ba. Let's be consistent. If you're telling me that there's no Tfisis Kedushin in the case of Yevama L'Shuk L'Ishzar, then why should Nisuin be any different? Amos, so the Gemara says you have to rewrite the script of Rav. Kedushin v'Nisuin ein ba. Meaning that if Kedushin ein ba, don't even entertain the possibility that Nisuin could be valid. Ibois Ema. Now the Gemara gives an alternative interpretation of Rav. Nisuin Yeshba. Let's take Rav literally as we had the transmission originally. But we're talking about a case of Nisuin without Bia. Like we had many times. And therefore we're going to consider it like znus, and even though there was no bia, it's like she had bia with him. So that kedushin themselves would not generate an isra on the yavam, and the man could be miyabim. But in a case where there was nesuin, it's as if she had a bias nus, and that generates an isra on the yavam. And this Gemara that we're learning now supports what we've said thousands of times, that Zika is an Isha's relationship. And therefore, if she violates that Isha's relationship, has a relationship with another man, or in this case, the Suin is like she had a relationship with another man, then it's like an Isha's Zinsa, and she's a Surel Baila Vinitmas. Now we have a third interpretation of Ra. Kedushin ein ba, Nisuin yesh ba. She doesn't need a get from the Makadesh to be matah for the Yavam. But Nisuin yesh ba, because of Nisuin to the Sheni, she's going to need a get. Now, this is really strange. The Kedushin is not chal, the Nisuin is not chal, but yet she needs a get after the Nisuin. Why? So this already what we call siyag, or chashash gzeira d'Rabbanan. Why? The michlafa be isha shalach ba'il l'mdina sayam. Right, a woman whose husband went out to Medina Sayam, she got married b'shogeg based on one aid that testified her husband died. And they're going to say that such a woman that she got remarried to, she got married to the second husband, she doesn't need a get. And our case is dangerously similar to that case, strikingly similar, and therefore we're going to require a get. That when the Torah says Losia Eshes Hameis Achuta, it means, as Rav said, that there's no chalos kiddush. They took a vote and they accepted that ruling of Rav. Rabbi Yochanan said, apparently, he's a Talmud of Rabbi Yanai, Rebbe, Lo Mishnasenu Hizu. I don't understand why you needed a whole chabura, you had to gather the whole yeshiva together to come to this conclusion. It's a Mishnah. Tisnan is a Mishnah Masechet Kedushin. A man marries a woman in a way that at the time of the Kedushin could not possibly be chal. But he made a Tanai that let the Kedushin be chal later on. Like now, he's a guy, and he can't have Kedushin with a Jewish girl. But Omer Lisha, he says to her, Gaya. And this comes under the halacha of Davar Shalo Boliola. And this Mishnah in Kedushin is assuming Ein Adam Makne Davar Shelo B'Oliol. Another case, Liachar Shesh Tachre, when my master will give me get shechur, and then I'll be a Yisrael. Or in a case of a Yisrael who says to Shifcha Knanis, Iskadshili Liachar Shetitachari, Liachar Sheyomas Bailech. Here's a case where a man gives Kedushin to a married woman. And he says that the Kedushin Bichal after her husband dies. Not a nice thing to do, if you ask me. But anyway, it's not a valid Kedushin. Liachar Shetomot Achosich. This man is married to Rachel, gives Kedushin to Leah, and he says this Kedushin Bichal after Rachel drops dead. Also not a very nice thing to do. Oh, Liachar Sheyachlotz Lich Yevimech. Okay, that's not so tragic. A woman falls for Yibum. She's a Shomeres Yavam, and a man is Mekadesh her, such that it could be Chal Liachar Zman, meaning after she gets Chalitza from the Yavam. So none of the above cases are valid because ain't other Makne Davar Shelo B'Yom. But the Mishnah gives you a case of Yevamot Almanas after Chalitza. So apparently right now it cannot be Chal. Do you see clearly from the Mishnah that there's no Kedushin Tofsin in the Yevamot L'Shuk? So why did you, Rabbi Yanai, have to gather together the entire Chabura, like City Hall, and make a declaration that we paskin that there's no Tfis Kedushin in the Yevamot L'Shuk? It's written in a Mishnah Kedushin. Later, Rabbi Yanai says, he used a phrase, if let's say you find a pearl down in the sea, so you might say, oh, I found the pearl. No. What happened was the pearl was covered by some stone or whatever it was down in the bottom of the sea. I was a deep sea diver. I was able to remove that stone, and now you can get access to the pearl. He says, he loved the doli lechaspa. If I would have removed this piece of pottery that's covering over an expensive pearl, mivish kachas marganisa to say, would you have found it? So if not for the fact that I enlightened you and taught you that ain't kedushin tosi yevama, you could have interpreted the Mishnah in a different way. And the reason why the kedushin is not chal is because ein biyado shalom akadish lachlotz v'tluya b'das hayavam. How does he know that the yavam will be choletz? And right now, he's enjoined from marrying her because she's Yevamot L'Shuk. So is he saying, oh, well, my kedusha bichal after his chalitza? How does he know that he'll do chalitza? And that's called kedushin of a davar shelo b'Oliol, and it cannot be chal, it cannot be valid. Even though right now, if he were mekadesh, we would recognize the kiddush. So that's what Rabbi Yanai says. You need me to expose the beautiful stone. Omalei Rav Shleish Lakish, he loved the kalsach avarabba. If not for the fact that you gave an accolade to Rabbi Yanai that he's a gavarabba, havamina no, I would have interpreted the Mishnah is masnisin, which seems to indicate that ain't kedushin tofsin, is Rabbi Akiva yidiyam ain't kedushin b'chayvei lavin. So Yevamot L'Shuk is chayvei lavin, and therefore according to Rabbi Akiva ain't kedushin tofsin ba. And the entire machlokas between Rav and Shmuel is according to Racham that kedushin tofsin b'chayvei lavin, but here it says lo tiyeh samesh liachutz lishzar lo tiyeh ba'avaya. So the Gemara asks the Kasha on Reish Lakish, who interprets the Mishnah like Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is ki Omar La. If he says to the Yevama, is kachi li liachar sheyachlotz lech Yevamech, litvasei ba kedushin. We have a whole list of Tanoim who hold Adam Makne Davar Shelo B'Oliol. And one of them is none other than Rabbi Akiva. Dasham inalei Rabbi Akiva the Omar Adam Makne Davar Shelo B'Oliol. And this is the famous Rabbi Akiva of Nidarim, when a woman who's married and she prohibits her husband from benefiting from that which she produces. Like, let's say, for example, she's going to weave a garment. The garment right now doesn't exist, and she already now wants to generate a neder, otherwise known as a kona, shani osa b'lefich. And Rabbi Akiva says that neder is a valid neder and it needs hafara. So that's the sugya here on Daf Tzadi Gimel Amid Aleph.